If you've ever wondered how to bring your drawings to life with color, today's tutorial on watercolor painting is an absolute must-watch. Join me today as we embark on an artistic adventure, exploring the captivating art of watercolor painting and witnessing the transformation of our simple rose drawing from last week's tutorial into a vibrant masterpiece. So let's grab our watercolor supplies and get started. For my brushes today, I'll be using these awesome Grabby brand brushes. This is a larger number 4 brush with a nice pointy tip for some of the larger spaces. I also have a number 0 Grabby brush for the smaller areas. And last but not least, a number 1 Princeton liner brush for some of the important details at the end. And as a side note, if you're interested in more of the details to any of the supplies you see me using here today, you can find it in the description of this video. Now, as I have previously said, I did teach step-by-step how to draw this beautiful rose for yourself in my tutorial from last week, which I'll post at the end of this video if you're interested. But even though many of you viewers enjoy drawing your own outlines, some of you don't. So, for a 2-day limited time, I will leave a link with this printable outline as a free gift to all my supporters and subscribers. After those 2 days, it will still be available for purchase on my Etsy shop, and both of those links will be listed in the description of this video. Then after you've either drawn or traced this rose onto your watercolor paper with a pencil, you are all set to paint. Now the colors I'm choosing to paint this rose are fairly light in value. So even though I drew this rose really lightly with a pencil, I'd like to lighten up my lines even more so that they're not going to be seen as much in my finished painting. To do this, I'm taking a kneaded eraser, which is basically a moldable, sort of sticky eraser, and I'll use that to just dab at my lines. Now, dabbing is the key here. If I rub at the lines instead, it's just going to erase it. But if I dab it, the stickiness of the eraser simply takes off any loose graphite along the pencil line, making it lighter in value. Of course, this is an optional step. It's just a trick I like to do on occasion. Now that my lines are lightened up, I'm going to go ahead and get my paints ready to go. I've got some Gamboge yellow, some sap green, and as another option, you can mix a little brown or black into the sap green if you feel like the green is too bright. And then I have Quinacridone rose. Now I'll start painting this, working my way from the inside of the flower to the outside. So first I'm going to paint a nice dark pink dot of color right in the very center of the flower. Then from here on, I'll be using the wet on wet technique for the other petals. So here on this next petal, I'll paint the tiny section with water first, using my smaller brush. And then I'll add in a hint of pink in the corner of the petal, yellow in the center, and a touch more pink in the other corner, letting the colors blend into each other slightly. I'll continue to paint the majority of these center petals in a similar way. Now, a couple of reasons I'm choosing to paint these petals using the wet on wet technique today is first, because having the extra water sort of dilutes or lightens up the colors a little bit, which I'm wanting today. And secondly, because I love how the water really makes the colors spread. Now, you'll see more of what I mean as we start getting into the larger petals. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind as we work on the center area. This section should be a little darker in value than the outer petals, so it's okay to keep it nice and dark or to even add in more color later if you need to. Also, as you can see here in this close-up, I have painted some petals with more yellow than pink and some with more pink than yellow. This just gives a little bit of variety and separation. The next thing to keep in mind is to let sections or petals dry before painting right next to it. You don't want all the colors and all the petals to blend and bleed into one big blob. So either you can skip around waiting for each section to dry, or sometimes if I want to move a little quicker, I'll actually use my hair dryer and blow sections dry so that it'll dry faster. If you're enjoying this tutorial or finding my tips helpful today, please consider subscribing. Keep in mind that when you've subscribed, you'll be the first to know when new videos or free limited time outlines are available. All right, I think the center of the rose is pretty much done. So let's start working on the outer petals. Now, for these, we will still be using the wet on wet technique, but instead of the pink on the outsides with the yellow in the middle like before, we're going to paint the yellow on the inside edge of the petal and paint the pink on the outside edge of the petal. Now go ahead and paint the next 2 or 3 smaller petals in the same way. Now let's paint some of these larger petals. So we're going to switch over to the larger brush. We'll paint these again with water first, the yellow on the inside of the petal, and the pink on the outside edge of the petal. Okay, this is the fun part. Now, watch how the color spreads into the wet area. At this point, I'm not really trying hard to make the paint do a certain thing or blend in a certain way. I'm just placing the color on the edges and letting it bleed and blend the way it wants to. This is really so much fun to watch. If you need to go back into some of these sections with a little more color or a smaller brush, that's okay too. You know, something else I think you should keep in mind is even though these are the colors I've chosen to use for this rose today, you are the artist for your work and you can choose whatever colors you want. Play around and experiment with different colors of roses if you like. At this point, my water is getting pretty tinted with color, and because it's starting to affect the wash of water I'm doing a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and switch out for some clean water now. All right, I think this is looking pretty good so far. With the main part of the rose done, let's now paint the little bud here. For this, I'll again paint this section with water first, then I'll add some yellow at the base of the bud and pink on the outer tip. All right, while I let that bud finish drying, let's move on to the leaves of this rose. Now, because this larger brush does have a nice pointy tip, I can create some pretty thin lines with it, but if you need to, feel free to switch to a smaller brush. I'm just going to start by painting the main part of the stem with sap green first. Then I'll wet down the leaf area with water and start applying the sap green to the outside edges. Now that the edges are done, I'll paint a little line of color down the center of the leaf. And then you can rinse and dry your brush and use the damp brush to spread some light bits of color to the center parts of the leaves, or you can water down some of the sap green on your tray and paint in a light value of green in the center of the leaves, whichever way works best for you. Now just continue this until all the leaves have been painted. Okay, let's finish off the greenery around the bud next. I'll use water first, and then I'll add a darker or more concentrated green at the base, spreading it thinner and lighter to the tips. If you'd like to, you can also add in some nice dark green by adding sap green and some ivory black in these 3 small sections. And lastly, let's pull out our liner brush now, and using that same dark green paint, let's paint in some very thin vein lines on the leaves. And that's it for today's lovely rose painting. I truly hope you had some fun painting along with me today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.